1. Discussion ensued, and there was confusion as to whether this was reference to a single or multiple person complaint, to which Town Administrator Bolton said, stated, quote, "the single one he did," end quote. See timestamp 8:27 of the YouTube video. The committee, after further discussion, decided to proceed to initiate a scheduling, and member Carl Hallstrom volunteered for the assignment. In the 9/19 meeting, member Hallstrom updated the committee that he recommended to Mr. Fillmore that he read out the 2 complaints at a select board meeting so that the Board of Selectmen members would have full clarity of the complaints. This was because he had reviewed the May meeting and discovered that neither of the complaints was addressed in the May public comment portion of the Board of Selectmen meeting. Member Eileen Meany continued to push that the complaint 2024-1 be moved forward, knowing that it had not been confirmed that Mr. Fillmore had met the requirement of the notification by the committee. Rather, she relied on memory and not fact. Later in that same meeting, Member Hallstrom explained that this was not prudent to move forward on either case, as the requirements had not in fact been confirmed to have been met for either case, because the public comment made on May 20th, 2024 had nothing to do with the complaint filed after he reviewed the May 20th minutes that were referenced by Town Administrator Bolton in the prior meeting. Chair Drake also made comments that a vote had been made by the committee to move the complaint forward, which is a false statement because there was only discussion and agreement around the issue, never a vote. The following are questions or concerns that I have a result of the actions taken. 1. The answers or interjections made by the town administrator are not full truths. Town Administrator Bolton fully understood that the minutes in front of her and only decided, let me read that. The answers and/or interjections made by the town administrator were not full truths. Town Administrator Bolton fully understood the minutes in front of her and decided only to read a portion of the minutes that fit the narrative that the requirements of the notification had been met. Town Administrator Bolton knows full well that the requirement was not met and made no attempt to relay that information. It is my opinion that Ms. Bolton is friends with Mr. Fillmore and Ms. Meany and is using her position to influence the decision to move this complaint forward. 2, Ms. Meany, who has in many instances called for a point of order in meetings, uses no facts in her arguments to move this case forward, but rather vague references and recall to past Board of Selectmen meetings. In my opinion, Ms. Meany is using her position as a member of the Ethics Committee to push a complaint forward for her friend and using another of her friends to fortify her recollection, and my view of that is in bullet point 1. 3, Mr. Fillmore falsely stated that he exhausted all avenues to resolve the issue. He then followed up with an email, again falsely stating that he had exhausted all avenues. He was then coached by a member of the Ethics Committee to make a statement 2 months after filing his complaint to rectify the false statements without a discussion with the Ethics Committee. 4, it is to be presumed that interjections will be made for all complaint applications that are incomplete or incorrect in order to fill in the blanks and/or mold the complaint to ensure that it fits the committee's requirements. Signed, Jackie Pratt, 10/1/24, addressed to Ware Ethics Committee, Town Office Building, 15 Flanders Memorial Road, Ware, New Hampshire, 03281.
All right. So we have that correspondence, and we'll just look at
Yep.
all the bullet points from Jackie.
I think probably what my recommendation to do with this correspondence would be to review the comments, being able to review the video and to come back in and look at it it could be an agenda item for our December meeting, to respond. I'm not reading this as a formal complaint. I'm reading it as a question.
The question at the end really deals with 2 distinct issues, I think, and it's an important question. We have been concerned that we understand our rules to require that prior to accepting a complaint and proceeding to act on it, we need to make sure that we are in effect the group of last resort, that the applicant did everything possible to try to resolve the complaint prior to the time it was brought forward to us. And I think that's important, and we need to do that. And the question is, are we going to act as a technical requirement so that if the complainant doesn't fill out the form correctly, it's automatically rejected? Or are we going to are we going to recognize that some folks fill out forms better than others, and that if the form is not filled out correctly, we want to make sure that we help the individual to fill that out? So, for example, if we're not satisfied that a date is correct, or if we're not satisfied that an effort has been made in the Fillmore complaint cases to fully resolve the issue, if possible, prior to coming to us, then is it our job, and I think it is, to help that individual to move the complaint forward? I don't think we should rely on any technical failure on the part of the applicant to deny the complaint. And I think that's what, in fact, we did. Carl made a significant investigation, came to certain conclusions. At that point, we could have rejected the complaint. And it may be that the problems of the complaint are not correctable. Okay? That you can't go back and do these things, in which case the complaint should be rejected. But the fact that the information was not on the complaint is not something that should bar the complaint from going forward. We need to help folks meet our rules, especially since sometimes the rules themselves are not as clear as they should be. That checkbox thing is a perfect example. So,
And I think, and the reason why I'm recommending we go back and look at the videotape, for lack of a better way to put it, is I think that was the conversation. I think we had this conversation about how we were going to proceed in that situation. I think we had a pretty rich conversation about it. And that's what led to
Carl.
the outreach, the discussion. But I want to go back and verify that, because I think, to your point, Neil, we're trying to figure out, those were like among the first complaints that we actually received, and I think we're trying to figure out what our process is and how we make it as user-friendly as possible for individuals who are attempting to resolve an issue using this committee. So, but I want to make sure that that's, for my own self, that was the process, and that was the discussion, and that was what ensued. And so to be able to answer that question, how are we going to in the future if we should have another situation like this where somebody doesn't, fully understand the process, that we are able to give them the guidance, like, oh, okay, this is what you do now, and this is how you get this, this is what we would recommend that you do in order to meet that standard. Because I think, if I'm recalling the conversation correctly, I think that was our default stance, like, we want to help people to be able to use this process. So, but I would like to go back and look at it.
And I,
And excuse me, Carl, are you looking at what Bruce did or at what we did?
What we did.
I brought up initially how this checkbox will automatically checked, and I had a question to Wendy if Bruce had done all three of these items that were check marked. Mm-hmm. And then we looked at the form and they were already check marked. The form itself, when you print it out, it's already checked.
Yeah.
And so I had asked at the time, hey, did he do all three of these, or did he do one of them? I can't recall my exact question at the thing, but I think it was my first or second meeting with the board.
Yeah.
So I just want to know how the form was used or how it was done.
Yeah, if I'm recalling it correctly, it was like a technical application of the way that the form would fill on the site, like it would come pre-filled. So I think
We changed that, didn't
we
we?
did change it, but it was based on that discussion.
Yes.
And that's what I'm trying to verify, like, I'd have to go back and look in order to be able to I think, adequately answer the question. And so that's why I'm making the suggestion. Let's all go do our due diligence. Let's go review the tapes, come back in and be able to speak intelligently to the question. And we can put it on the December agenda to do so. So,
So what will be the result of the December meeting? And what would be the next step after that?
in relationship to this?
Yes,
My hope would be that each of us would go review the past information, look at this question, and for us to be able to make the statement like, yes, we said this is how we're going to proceed. We are planning on proceeding in this way. If somebody comes to us having filled out an application and it isn't complete, or they're, they need some guidance, we're going to give them the guidance. And we're going to say, if you'd like to proceed, we need you to do X, Y, and Z, whatever that would be.
okay. Let's assume we do that, and let's assume that's the outcome of the next meeting.
Sure.
Then how will that apply to the Fillmore complaints?
I think, that's a separate topic, because we haven't even moved any of that forward. We accepted it. We accepted it, and I think that what was supposed to happen was that we were supposed to be scheduling a pre-hearing
Right.
for Mr. Fillmore. But we also know that the recent resignation of our chair, and we only having 3 members on our committee, puts us in a position of not really being able to move that process forward at this moment.
But I think that's my question. Forgetting about the answer to the question that you raised and how we're going to help folks fill out forms in the future if
Yep.
they're incomplete, have we made a decision that either on complaint 1 or 2, all the criteria were met? Have we made that decision?
I believe that we made a decision on one of the complaints. I believe that, and I would again have to go back to the meeting minutes. If I'm recalling this correctly, there was one complaint that was a single complaint against one person, and then there was another complaint that was a multiple person complaint. It was clear, at least from my memory, that we believed, because we voted to schedule a pre-hearing, that it had met the standard threshold for that one. So we were moving forward with the one for pre-hearing scheduling. And that, as a part of the discussion and our review, we needed to ensure that that standard had been met to the multi-person complaint. That's my memory of it.
Yeah, and I had stated that Bruce had, was going to read his complaints out at the Board of Selectmen meeting, public comment.
That he had or was going to do it in the
At the
future?
time, I said he was going to do, he was gonna go do it, and then I looked at a September meeting. I thought that it was a September meeting he read out, but it was actually the end of August he had read out his 2 complaints. Once I reviewed that Board of Selectmen meeting and saw that he read it, then I wrote to Luke, our chairperson, and said, I see that Bruce has read both complaints out to the Board of Selectmen, which were part of the complaint. I felt you could proceed then on both complaints.
Okay.
That's all I said to him in our email.
And that was in
That was probably,
September?
September.
Yeah, okay. So,
but we hadn't discussed complaint number 2 going forward.
and we probably would have discussed it in October, but we didn't meet in October.
We didn't meet in
Okay.
October,
Okay, and then, of course, Luke has
right?
resigned his. So you went, as a result of that meeting, it was an action item to review that. You went and reviewed it. You identified that he read both complaints into the record in an August Board of Selectmen meeting.
Correct.
You relayed that and I'm just summarizing, you relayed that piece of information to the chair.
Right, I believe I put it to
Okay.
all committee members, you know, I sent it to all. I believe I sent it to everybody, once I reviewed that.
So both of those are ready to go once we have a fully seated board, at least with the pre-hearing process.
I'm a little bit confused by this. Are you suggesting that a retroactive action to resolve the issue meets the requirements of the Ethics Committee?
I don't know what you mean by retroactive.
If, as I understand the requirement, that you have made every effort to resolve the issue prior to coming to us, those efforts have to be made at a time when action could be taken to resolve the issue. That time has long passed on Bruce's complaints. So coming up after the fact and telling the board that, in effect, he's filed the complaints and he wants them to take this action, isn't that meaningless? Doesn't he have to have, the complainant have to have taken action to resolve the issue at a time when when the resolution could occur? Once the appointment is made, in this case, once that appointment is made, there's nothing the board can do. So coming in after the appointment is made to say, there's a problem here, I think you made a mistake, is nice, but how does that meet the criteria that we've set forward?
I think that's a great question, and I think that each of us has to decide if we feel that that met the standard. Our original vote, right, which resulted in an action item for Carl, was to determine whether or not it met that litmus test. That was what we suggested that the course of action at that moment be, right? We weren't getting into whether or not it would have any change in the future. It was whether or not, this person's coming in saying, I disagree with this course of action. I think it was handled inappropriately. We don't have the power to change that anyway. That would never be our role. It's not like we could overturn the way that something happened. We're being asked if whether or not that was a violation of the ethics code.
I understand that, and I think you understand my point. I think our requirement that action be taken prior to coming to us to resolve the issue requires the applicant to have done something in a timely manner when the the problem that he's raised could be resolved.
Sure. Is it, when you look at our process, do we say, like, and I already know the answer to this, in no way do we say it has to be done within this time frame?
No, but the implication of having a requirement that you take action to resolve resolve the issue prior to coming before this committee, I think logically requires that the action be taken at a time when a resolution could occur.
Sure. So I guess my question to you to think about moving forward, do you want to look at that section in our process and try to rework the wording because we created that?
If, I thought the wording, or at least the implication of the wording, was relatively clear, but if you're raising the issue, obviously, it's not relatively clear. It's not eminently clear to everyone, so, yeah, I think we need to go over that again.
And that would be something that I would put, on the table for, so we've got December, and then we move into 2025. That would certainly be something, I think, whatever this committee looks like, that we go back in and say, okay, we've had our first case. We had talked about that this was going to be a work in development anyway. We've had our first case, right? That based on the information that we've learned by walking through this process, let's tighten this up and that up to be able to better support what everyone's trying to achieve here. So,
But in the meantime, reputations are damaged that might not have been damaged. That's of concern to me.
sure. And with anything, And we talked about that all the way through around what was our, what was going to be our transparency around that. We had our guidance from legal counsel on what 91A allowed us to do and what it didn't allow us to do. I mean, if you recall correctly, we spent months trying to figure out how to best ensure that reputationally, what did damage me? I mean, I can go back and think about meetings that we spent, entire meetings talking about how do we protect. And the guidance that we received was if you're an elected official, short of it creating, and I'm trying to remember the words from that, like it had to do with financial harm. It was very specific in the statute around 91A. But that we needed to be transparent when it came to elected officials. So, including ourselves. Right? So we provide that level of transparency. We provide the opportunity for someone to send in, the reading of this complaint, I think, supports all of that transparency, right? We are an organization and a body that can assume feedback. I can assume feedback. I can accept feedback. I can hear complaints from individuals. I'm happy to do that. I want to go back in and look at the information that I've been given to be able to answer this question intelligently and completely. And so we'll put it back in for December to make sure that we do that.
Are you suggesting that we should respond to the letter?
I think that we should come back in December and answer that question, having done the research to be able to do so. So,
Now, my comment has to deal with future ethics complaints. We have our little form to fill out, and they fill it out the best they can, and they give whatever section of the ethics code they feel that it's been wrong or violated, stuff like that. And I know we review it and get it into the right form, but not every ethics complaint can have an immediate resolution. There's an investigative part to it. There's a time, like if there's something going on in a certain board or committee or a town official or a town worker doing something, there's a discovery part. And then can I, John Q. Public, go and stop that truck driver from using his thing to do personal business with? Where's the ethics resolution that the complainant's going to do? Am I going to go put myself in danger to say, hey, you can't use that truck to haul dirt for your own farm or something like that? But you can make notifications to the superintendent or the Department of Public Works, leader.
Right.
I don't know what his title's called, his or her title's called. But we can't say everything has the same stamp or the same time flow, depending on what the thing says. Say somebody's reviewing something and finds out there's money being spent on a certain fund that's not approved. But it's been going on for 2 years, and you discover, hey, they've been giving themselves pay raises every month for the last 2 years. How are you gonna undo that with an ethics complaint? You're not. All we can do is say, hey, this is not right, and then let
I
whatever
see.
board or committee's gonna do it.
You make a good point.
We can't
Sure.
you can't put everything in one bucket
Yep.
on an ethics complaint, because not every situation is gonna be the same way. Some you can do immediately and put a stop to it, if it's like a harassment kind of thing. I know we have another board or another way to deal with harassment, but
So what you're saying, there may be some situations where the action was taken, it's not possible to resolve it prior to the time of the action, and therefore, the requirement that everything be done, or the complainant make every effort to resolve the issue before coming to us is irrelevant. Okay.
I'm just saying, it's really hard to,
Quantify.
There-
put everything in one timeline for every complaint. They're just
But
different.
in your example, while you can't undo what happened in the past, I certainly would have expected that complainant to have gone to the director of
Public Works, or
Public Works,
whoever.
and said, you've been allowing this guy to take dirt back to his farm, you shouldn't do that, please change that, okay? Nothing happens, then it's a legitimate complaint for us to handle,
Right,
because
the same.
the complainant's made the effort. Can't do the past, but he can do it for the future.
Can't undo the dirt that's been moved. But
All right, so was there any other correspondence besides,
the only other correspondence we had was the Board of Selectmen, the town council feedback that we got. Naomi, you sent it out to us. You sent it to Luke first, the town council thing on how to fill our vacancy.
so,
I can put that into our.
yep,
meeting.
I would attach that to the minutes,
Yes.
and then,
Right.
you know, I believe it was read at the Board of Selectmen meeting, and, again, I wasn't prepared to, with my email queued up, to be
Yeah.
able to read it into the record tonight. I can paraphrase to say that the decision that came back, the trail of information that council followed led to relying upon the implementation document as our guideline, which moved the selection of members of the committee back to this local board. And so we're using that process to be able to seat the next two ethics committee members based on the framework that we discussed about 25, 30 minutes ago. And so we can attach, Carl, we can attach that to the minutes.
I'll attach it
I'll
to the
try to
minutes.
remember to bring it into the December meeting so that we can read the actual, into the record as a
Read it
part of the
into the
minutes. Yep,
December then.
so, okay. So, and that was the only other correspondence?
Yes.
Okay. We do have, you know, on the agenda is new business. I'd like to kind of go back to what had been old business for a moment, because part of what was supposed to happen between, I think, September and October, no, it would have been, I remember now. Because we were waiting for the understanding about the one complaint versus the other complaint, we were looking at moving to schedule that pre-hearing conference. That would have been decided to be scheduled at this meeting, based on having a full complement of a committee. And so that action needs to be tabled, from my perspective, until we have a full committee, meaning that one of us needs to contact Mr. Fillmore and say, we're working to fill 2 vacancies. Once we fill 2 vacancies, we will then move to have the pre-hearing conference. And so, Carl, do you feel comfortable reaching out to him? I know you've already reached out to him
Old
regarding,
business, we're gonna reach out to Mr. Fillmore.
Yep. to advise him of where we're
After
at.
the vacancy fill.
I would reach out to him. It'd be my recommendation to reach out to him now to tell him that we're in the process of filling 2 vacancies and that we will work to schedule the pre-hearing once those vacancies are filled. And we have, if he, you know, and I think the question's always going to be like, why do we have to wait? You know, in order for this to be done appropriately, the members of this committee have to be able to make the decision as to whether or not they're going to participate in that process or they're going to recuse themselves. And so I think it's important that we have a full complement
And
to
we
be able
need-
to do that.
Per our thing, we need 3 members to be part of, 3 or more members shall be necessary to hear any complaint that is filed.
Okay. So, okay.
All right, I'll send them a letter.
All right. New business.
Any new business? No?
Okay, hearing none. Nope. I don't know what that is.
It's what was attached to your email.
Oh, is it related to the,
If you remember what's in the.
oh, okay, then I can read it in now.
So you can just leave it at the table to go get this?
Thank you.
Here's some numbers and I'll do this for you.
Gonna go back to correspondence.
Okay, so this is the,
This
Town
is the town council memorandum related to,
Excuse me, can I call point of order, please?
unfortunately, no.
I sent a certified letter and you didn't read it under correspondence. I sent 2 complaints to your emails, 2 additional people, one for her and one for her.
Ma'am,
You're ignoring it.
I read this into,
I have it right here.
I don't have any,
Well, you guys should have, because Pam signed for it at town office, so.
That's the one.
this one?
That's the envelope that was in your mailbox.
And then
that
the other
Pam
one I
signed.
sent the email.
The other one's an email, she's saying. That's the letter that Pam signed for.
Oh, okay, I don't have receipt, I apologize, I don't have receipt of the other correspondence. I don't,
It was in your email.
Carl, do you have,
a receipt.
do you have an email from Ms. Pratt?
I had an email. She sent it to everybody back in September?
I don't have,
It was in September?
It was emailed to all of you.
Yeah, it was in September. Yeah, but that, it's supposed to go through the chair, and October 9th. So Luke would have been the chair.
yeah, I wasn't in receipt of
This
this.
is a violation complaint.
The whole ethics committee, not just Luke.
I've never seen this before.
Right.
Have you?
Neil, because your email's not.
Hmm?
You haven't set your email up, that's why.
Did you see that?
I haven't even seen what it looks like yet.
This was the other one, I can re-forward them from my email if you'd like. I've got it.
I'll have to check my email. I'm trying to remember what I received from Luke Drake, but I might have got, I knew this, I remember this letter. This was sent to
They're
us,
all sent at the same time.
right? This was sent to us,
That was snail mail and email.
right? But
I think
the
it's
ethics,
certified per complaint.
right,
Should
but the
have
ethics
someone-
complaints go to the Ware Ethics Committee website, then the chair then disseminates it to us. Now, if you send it to us personally, I don't recall. I'd have to take a look at my, again, I don't have my iPad, so.
Can you do me a favor and read in the implementation document again, the statement about what you need to be able to accept a complaint?
The Ethics Committee shall consist of 5 residents of the town of Ware. A quorum of 3 or more committee members shall be necessary to hear any complaint that is filed.
Okay. So, we have a couple, and Ms. Pratt, I apologize, I did not see these prior to this evening, and the only correspondence I have is the one that was sent. So, I can read them into the record tonight. One of the complaints is against me, so I can't be the party to either read it or make a decision about its disposition. And so I'm gonna hand that one over to Neil, and unfortunately, even with reading it into the record, we don't have you don't have quorum to make a decision about the disposition of it because there's only 2 members. So
Right,
this
you'd
is
have to be-
exactly what I'm referring to. My suggestion with that one would be to read it into the record, and then it can be handled once the
Once we
two
get
other
it.
parties are seated. This other complaint is about somebody who's not a member of this committee, so we can move forward with at least reading it into the record.
Wait
But
a second, Eileen, before you do that,
Yeah,
didn't we set up a procedure where we would first determine, what, the chair was to...
if it met the standard.
Yeah.
So you have to
we-
go through your litmus test as to whether or not it even meets the standard.
But wasn't that done by the chair, so that, I'm sorry, I
We'd have
guess
to-
it's been so long,
You have
I've
to go
forgotten.
through your process
Yep.
documents to
Yep.
see how a complaint's
Yeah,
handled.
I'm not sure that it's appropriate to read it into the record at this time, that's all I'm saying.
Okay. And you probably have a good point, as I'm sitting here thinking about it. So, my recommendation then, based on what you're saying, Neil, would be to table it until,
And you will check to make sure that, check the process document.
yep.
Okay.
So, we will,
I'm going to give these to the secretary.
good enough? Okay. So those will be tabled until we can stand up a full committee, and then we will go through our process.
And then the chair will assign
Yes.
numbers to
Yes.
these two complaints.
So we've received correspondence from Ms. Pratt. We can put that into the record tonight. We received 2 complaints, which we'll move to address once the 2 vacancies are filled. And then we will walk through our process. So, okay. I'm going to go back to reading into the record the opinion from Drummond Woodson. So this was sent October 3rd to our town administrator regarding Code of Ethics and Ethics Committee. So this memo responds to questions raised by the Ethics Committee and brought to the Select Board, which you have forwarded to me for my thoughts. I have reviewed the following documents as you have provided them to me. Letter dated September 30th, 2024 from Luke Drake, Chair of Ethics Committee, drafts of the Code of Ethics prior to its adoption by town meeting in 2006. 2003, Board of Selectmen's draft, 10/27/05 working draft, 11/8/05 final draft. Minutes from the 2006 deliberative session discussion of Article 40, volunteer and ethics form dated 2018 used today, excerpts of town meeting records, 3/3/2013 vote tallying approving Article 28 to dissolve Ethics Committee effective March 2014, 2/13/2012 election results, 3/10/2009 election results, 3/11/2008 election results, 3/14/2006 vote tallying approving Article 40 to, quote, adopt the Code of Ethics, which applies to all town officers, elected officials, appointed committee officials, members, and all town employees, end quote. Minutes of Ethics Committee meetings from 8/29/2005, agenda handout and minutes, 9/12/2005, 9/26/2005, 10/10/2005, 10/24/2005, 10/27/2005, 7/6/2006, 8/3/2006, 9/28/2006, 2/22/2007, 3/29/2007, 4/19/2007. As I understand it from these documents, the town meeting initially adopted the Code of Ethics in 2006. A 5-member ethics committee was elected by the voters starting in 2007. The 2013 town meeting voted to dissolve the ethics committee but leave the code in place. Then in 2022, town meeting voted to reinstate the ethics committee beginning in 2023. The ethics committee currently has 1 midterm vacancy that it would like to have filled, and questions have arisen about how this is supposed to occur. 1, was the selection of the draft ethics code titled, quote, implementation, end quote, adopted by the town meeting. I think the most logical conclusion is yes, based on the information we have available, but none of the documents I have seen specifically say that. The only way to know for certain is to know exactly what portions of the final draft document were on file at the town clerk's office and on the town website just prior to the 2006 town meeting, but it's my understanding that we don't know exactly what the document looked like. This means that we have to rely on circumstantial evidence to see what the intent of the voters really was. Ultimately, that is a test that the court would likely use. See Lamb versus Danville School Board, 102 NH 569 from 1960. There are two parts to the ethics code, the section with the guidelines and aspirations for ethical conduct and the implementation section. The implementation section includes provisions for the establishment, operation, duties, and powers of the Ethics Committee. The two sections always appear on different pages and are not always seen together. For example, the volunteer form adopted in 2018 and still used today includes the first section but not the implementation section. The Ethics Code was initially adopted by town meeting in 2006. The minutes of the deliberative session are not detailed enough to capture whether the implementation section was intended to be part of the code being voted upon. Similarly, Article 40 stated only, quote, shall the town adopt the code of ethics, which applies to all town officers, elected officials, appointed committee officials, members, and all town employees, question mark. A full detail of the proposed code is available in the town clerk's office during regular business hours and on the town website at www.where.nh.gov, end quote. I have not been provided a copy with the actual, quote, detail of the proposed code, end quote, that was on the town's website and available at the clerk's office at that time. What I have seen is a copy of something labeled, quote, final draft, end quote, dated November 8th, 2005. That document includes both the Code of Ethics, in quotation, section, preamble, responsibility, fairness, etc., and the section titled Where Ethics Code Implementation, in quotes. Following the adoption of Article 40 by the 2006 town meeting, it appears the Ethics Committee was in fact established, elected, and operated under the implementation section. This seems like it must have been the case because there is nothing in the first section of the code about an ethics committee, the number of members, whether they were to be elected or appointed, whether they could provide opinions, investigate complaints, etc. The only place that it seems that it could have come from was the implementation section, and it appears that town government as a whole believed that section was part of the code that town meeting had voted in favor of. Had it not been the case, it seems unlikely that the town clerk would have included ethics committee positions in the list of elected offices to be filled at 2007 town meeting. We also see in the minutes from the Ethics Committee meeting of March 29, 2007, that the committee had obtained legal advice from the local government center that the committee members had the ability to fill a vacant seat between elections themselves. As noted by Mr. Drake in his recent letter, an elected ethics committee is a, quote, optional elected office, and, quote, under RSA 41-2 and pursuant to RSA 669-75, vacancies in, quote, optional appointment made by the Board of Selectmen, end quote. Therefore, if the implementation had not been part of the adopted code, it seems likely that the LGC attorney would have advised that the Board of Selectmen was the appointing authority to fill a midterm vacancy on the Ethics Committee. Since they advised that the remaining committee members had the authority to fill a midterm vacancy themselves rather than the Board of Selectmen, it indicates that they had either seen documents or had been told that the implementation section, which specifically says that the committees fill such vacancies, was actually part of what the voters approved in 2006. Finally, I note that in 2022, town meeting approved Article 24, which stated the following, quote, to see if the town will vote to reinstate the Ethics Committee abolished in 2014 with members to be elected by vote of the town beginning in 2023 for terms of office as set forth in the Code of Ethics adopted by the town in 2006, end quote. Emphasis added. Since the only place that the Ethics Committee, the election of members in their terms of office actually appear is in this implementation section, I think we have to conclude that the intent of the voters in 2022 was to adopt the entire code document, including both the guidance section and the implementation section. Putting all of these things together, I think that the most logical conclusion is that the ethics code in effect in Ware today includes both sections. Ultimately, however, the only way to know this with 100% certainty would be A, find a copy of exactly what was on file and on the website immediately prior to the 2006 town meeting. Either it did or it did not include implementation, or B, have a court decide this through a declaratory judgment lawsuit, or C, have the next annual town meeting formally vote to adopt the implementation section as a part of the ethics code going forward. 2, If so, does that authorize the Ethics Committee to make the replacement appointment? Yes, as noted above, this is a, quote, optional elected office, end quote, under RSA 41-2. If a vacancy occurs midterm in one of these offices, the Board of Selectmen fills it unless some, quote, other method of filling a vacancy shall be provided by vote of the town, ... end quote, RSA 669-75. In this case, Section A4 of the implementation section states that should a vacancy in the committee arise, the remaining members of the Ethics Committee shall elect a town citizen to serve out the remainder of the term. If the implementation section was part of what the town meeting adopted, then this provision would control. Please note as well that a midterm replacement appointment is usually made only until the next annual election, where someone is elected to serve out the remainder of the term, if any, or a new term, if applicable. See RSA 669-61. However, where the local ordinance specifies that a midterm replacement serve out the remainder of the term, that local provision controls because RSA 669-61(1) says it does. If not the Ethics Committee, is it the Board of Selectmen? If it is the Board of Selectmen, does the 3 members of the Board of Selectmen that have an alleged complaint filed against them have to recuse themselves from voting on the appointment? As noted above, I think that it is most likely the Ethics Committee that is the body that fills midterm vacancies. 4, if the 3 Board of Select members recuse themselves, leaving only 2 members, is 2 members enough to appoint a new member? As noted above, I think that is most likely the Ethics Committee is the body that fills its own midterm vacancies. End of opinion. So, for the record, I'm going to pass this over to Carl to attach to minutes. So any discussion on the legal opinion?
No, and it pretty much followed what we had for our first opinion a couple months ago.
Sure. Yep. So, that was a lot to read. Okay.
This is a side comment on the old business. I was gone for 6 weeks. You know, I was in Nebraska doing some contract work. And I didn't open up any, like, business email, you know, for Ware Ethics Committee. I participated on the meeting via telecom,
Right.
the one. So, you know, it's probably in my inbox, whatever Jackie had sent. But it's like, I don't remember reading anything like that, so I'll just let you know, if it was sent to me or to all of us, I don't know.
Sure.
I'm gonna have to go take a look at it, because I came back, I was back for 5 days, and then I was on vacation. So,
Good enough.
and I just flew in this morning with a 5-hour time change from Hawaii, so,
Well, that's tough to take.
I don't know.
Great deal of sympathy for you.
A little aloha spirit, but.
All right, with that,
I try to read everything,
course.
but I just haven't,
it's okay,
I haven't looked at all my inbox stuff,
of course.
just haven't.
All right, any other? All right, with that,
Our next meeting will be
December 19th,
at
6
6
p.m.
o'clock.
Okay.
We stand
Meeting
adjourned.
adjourned?
We'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you very much.
Don't turn that up yet.
Don't turn it off yet.
Carl, I think this was yours. I just made the correction with the
Okay.
spelling.